Hi. So yes, I'm Dominique Deckmyn. I'm a journalist. So I've had actually 35 years this year of watching the technology industry. So I'm talking from that background, which sort of has given me the opportunity to sort of, see a number of technological revolutions. And this is the most interesting one, maybe the most important one. I'm going to, so I've been asked to bring you up to speed on what we know about AI now, which is quite a lot more than 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago when it was first turned up. I'm also very happy to see sort of a room full of trade union people ready to spend 2 days thinking about this, talking about this subject, because I do believe that is of immense importance. I do believe trade unions have an important role to play in what's started now. So this is a brief run that what I was hoping to tell you in an hour. I hope I'm going to manage that. I have too many slides, I have already realized. So let's just dive into that. People always try and find a historical comparison, right? What is this like? Is this like the iPhone revolution? Or is it like social networks? Is it like the internet? And so one important thing I wanted to share with you from my own observation is that for the last, say, 25 years, we've seen technology arrive first in people's private lives. And this is really quite important. So in the 80s and 90s, technology used to arrive in the workplace first, right? Your first PC was probably on your desk. Your first smartphone you bought for yourself. Your first use of social media was probably private. So since the last 25 years, really, most of the new interesting technology that I've been writing about as a journalist sort of has been arriving in people's private lives first. But AI is different. This is arriving in the workplace first. People are sort of playing around with it in their private lives, but it's coming in the workplace first. This is quite exceptional. And that is because this is one of the first technologies in an awful long time that is delivering productivity gains, which means it is about money. There is money to be made by implementing this technology. Now, we don't know how much money. We don't have much numbers yet. But this is the reason that we're feeling this huge pull from the industry, right? This, for the first time in a very long time, in decades, is a new technology that is going to save you money. So that is why companies have been rushing into this, even before the numbers were there to actually prove what kind of money we're talking about. And so, and this is being pulled. So it's the pull from companies that is driving the growth of artificial intelligence now. And this means that it's quite unlike these earlier revolutions we've seen in the last year as well. The web was one too that sort of went straight to the workplace. But for instance, social networks, the iPhone, those technologies had a whole different mechanic about it. So that's why it's different. Now, a comparison that we have been hearing more lately is this not more like the Industrial Revolution? And you see a lot of comparisons there that do make some number of sense. And often this comparison is made to say, listen, don't worry, it'll be all right in the end. People were worried about weaving machines, that they were going to take jobs away. As it turns out, in the end, there were more jobs, there was more wealth to go around. The world was a better place, which is true. But it's also true, obviously, that there was quite a long period in which that wasn't the case. It's been the Industrial Revolution was a hard time, and trade unions played a rather important role in that period. So that is a useful thing to keep in mind. It's often the argument of the pro-AI people saying, it'll be all right in the end. But as also Yuval Noah Harari, so the historian in his latest book, Nexus, argued, it's not such a great comparison to make the Industrial Revolution because it was sort of hard on a lot of people. Now, let's get back to the very basics I think most people know this, but it's good to remember. This is what this technology. We're talking about generative AI, which is the current wave of AI. The basic thing there is what they call the transformer. Technological breakthrough had happened 8 years ago at Google. The T in ChatGPT, the transformer, which meant that a simple language model suddenly became able to do an awful lot more things. Now, this was not what the people who developed these language models expected. It just happened. A lot of what the AI systems now do is not what they were designed to do. This is what is called emergent behavior. They appear to be very, very good at stuff that they were not designed for. And it's important to remember that, because that's not how previous technology used to work. It's not how people who do technology in companies are used to thinking, are used to working. So yes, the cat sat on the most likely next word, and it will pick the most probable next word. That's what a language model does. But because of this transformer aspect, which means that it can keep a larger context, the model is better at predicting, for instance, in a context as wide as a complete book or a series of books. And suddenly that means the model is building, apparently, a model of the world that's much more complex than the designers of these models ever expected. So what we don't know is there a limit to this development? At this moment, the models are getting smarter and smarter the bigger they get. And every time the model gets, say, 10 times bigger, new possibilities turn up. Suddenly, it turns out, that was a great surprise, that they could write a poem, that they could write computer code. No one expected them to be able to write computer code. They are writing computer code now. In fact, programmers themselves are now one of the jobs most impacted by generative AI, which is a big surprise. So, very important thing is that to keep in mind when we're talking about AI models is there is two very, very distinct phases in their development. There's the training phase and the inference phase. So people sort of have this idea in their mind that these are learning systems and that they become better over time automatically. And that is actually totally untrue. That is not what a generative AI system does. It does not become better over time. You can retrain it, and you'll have a new model, and that may be better than the previous model. But once the model is trained, it does not change. And the training phase is this highly intensive phase where these huge computer systems are used, great cost, great energy. Then in the inference phase, you apply this to actual problems, but the system does not evolve at this point. And this costs a lot less energy, but still, if you count it up, quite an amount. Then there's what we do here in Belgium. No one's training AI models here. They may say they're doing, they're not really doing that. No one is training models. What we're doing at the most is post-training, because the training is so hard, so expensive. Companies, most companies, researchers too, are taking a model that has been trained by someone else, typically an American company, because it is very expensive to do, and they do some post-training or fine-tuning. The terms are not identical, but basically we mean more or less the same thing on it, to make it behave more like something specific. So here in this image show you have a pre-trained network, pre-trained AI model that recognizes images. So you have flowers and people and sea, and then you fine-tune it to recognize sign language. So you fine-tune it to do sign language, or you fine-tune an international model to be better at Dutch, specifically, for instance, Belgian dialects. There's been a lot of attempts to get an international model to be better at Flemish dialects. Works really well. But what you don't really do is change the underlying model. So when companies are starting from pre-trained models, that would be very often Meta's Llama model, very popular now. So people just take the Llama model off the shelf, do some post-training fine-tuning, and use it for something new. This works very well. It also means you're working from basically technology you don't control yourself. And also, fine-tuning is not a science, it's an art. So the post-training is very good at making something behave sort of like what you want, like recognizing the sign language, but you don't control the complete product. The fundamental thing to remember about AI models is that they are, so all previous technology was deterministic, right? You write computer code, you know exactly what's coming out. That's why the use of the word algorithm actually in the title of this event is a little bit misleading, because algorithms actually are very exact. You know exactly what an algorithm, that's what the word algorithm actually means. There's a number of very precise steps you take to get a certain result. That is precisely not how generative AI works at all, even though people often think it does. These systems are probabilistic. That means they mostly do what you expect. And that is very hard to understand for people, right? Because companies see a demonstration. We got our first demonstration. They made a sort of AI system for the archive of the Standard 2 years ago, and it was amazing. Sort of, they start it up, it works. Sort of, and then you use it for a couple of days, and I said, yeah, we have to definitely give all our journalists access to this, and maybe the next step is give the readers access to this as soon as it works perfectly. And it never did. They never got it to work perfectly. The technology was not ready for that. It's great for a demonstration. It was sort of it was a search where you sort of ask a question about some political move. Yeah, what exactly happened to Guy Verhofstadt? Something like that. You get the answer from your own stories rather than from the internet. And the idea was you're going to have a more precise answer if you know where it's coming from. And it works really well. 75, 80% of the time, something like that. And that's what you very often get with these systems, because they do tend to still hallucinate. Now, hallucination is where the generative AI model tells you something that's not true, right? We've all encountered it. Now, with the way people typically think about technology, they think, oh, that's like a bug. We know about bugs. We have a computer program, it works, and then sometimes it gives the wrong answer, and so there's a bug, and you can fix the bug, and you're done. And somehow, it's very difficult for these companies to understand that AI is different. It doesn't work that way. The hallucination is not a bug. That's the way the system works. It's fundamentally a probabilistic thing. It does what you want some of the time, most of the time, ideally almost all of the time, but you can't exactly predict what it does. It's not actually an algorithm in the sense that we've learned to use the word, not the way I use the word algorithm. With an algorithm, I know exactly what I'm going to get every time. If you have the same input, you will have the same output every time. Not with ChatGPT. Try it. It will give you a different answer every time, with some common bits, but it can go very, very far off the track. And so the system they built for us at the Standard did that quite a lot. It went off the track. And it doesn't get fixed. And at a certain moment, I had this conversation with someone from Google who said, yes, what we're actually using here is a technology. It was then new. It's now RAG, it's called, Retrieval Augmented Generation, where they first retrieve documents and then make an answer based on the documents rather than creating an answer from the training material of the model. Very common. And they said, this is going to get rid of most hallucinations. So this is the remedy for hallucination. So I asked, this is 2 years ago, how many % of hallucinations will disappear? We can't tell you that. So there's no numbers. You can look everywhere. There is no numbers for how, well, there's a couple now. There's a couple of independent benchmarks that are counting sort of the hallucinations and trying to inform you. Say, yeah, just, if you ask ChatGPT a question, how often will it be wrong? Now, the numbers are huge. It depends on the kind of question you ask, obviously, but just give me an average number. And they try to avoid to give you that number because it's so high. And it's not going away. The hallucination is not a bug. It's, as they say in IT, it's not a bug, it's a feature. It's the way these things work. The thing that makes them so creative, so good at writing copy for publicity, also means you can't trust what they do ever. So yeah, those are the two problems that have most been named in the context of AI. There's bias, right? So the training material is somehow biased. That's why if you don't post-train, if you don't fine-tune the model, an AI model will tend to, if you ask, make me an image of a doctor, it will be a white male. Those things, that's the bias problem. Now this has been studied for a long time. It's not new at all. People have been thinking about the bias problem for 10 years. And it's manageable, I think. It does seem to be so what they do is they post-train these models, so they almost automatically, if you ask for a doctor, will give you a black woman. That's what Google did. And then it produced this picture of the founding fathers of the US, and there was some Asian and black founding fathers, which is factually incorrect. And they got an awful lot of flack for that. So what the latest trend, unfortunately, in the US is now that we're moving back from fine-tuning these machines to be more diverse, very dangerous word in the US now. So they're now moving back to doing less fine-tuning on bias issues in the US, and actually using that, I mean, Elon Musk for Grok has actually used that as a sales argument, right? We're not post-training, we're not censoring the AI, which is obviously totally ridiculous. A generative AI system is a word predictor. It does not have free speech, and so you can't censor it. But so US companies are doing less fine-tuning in that direction now, which is unfortunate since, as I said, European companies are using these US models to post-train, fine-tune, or use as they are. So hallucinations not going away. Actually, these examples are still quite rare. You'd expect to be, but maybe they just don't get to the press enough. But this was a company that had to then, apologize after someone asked the chatbot of the company, so the customer relations chatbot, asked a question, get an answer. It is not the right answer, but the user assumes it is. Earlier there was a case in Canada with an airline where the airline chatbot says, yes, you don't have to take that document with you. You can send it to us afterwards. And that was actually not the official policy of the company. But then the judge said, no, you've got to follow the policy that your chatbot gave the user. Which just mainly means that these companies were introducing a technology of which they didn't fully realize that it was not going to be 100% dependable. And in some jobs, that's not such a problem. Writing copy for advertising, which is now mostly done by AI. I mean, press releases, typically my inbox is full of press releases. Say 50-60% of those now, I'd say, are generally mostly written by generative AI. A lot of the mails from more the junior type of public relations professionals, generally mostly written by AI. Not well written, but I'm sure the percentages vary, but the percentage of AI mails in your inbox is going to be increasing in the next couple of years. Deal with it. There's a perception that this AI is moving ever faster, and I want to say yes, it is obviously, but there's something strange there. And so this is an interesting report that I'd recommend anyone who has, maybe some of you have seen this, but it's sort of a 350-page report, so it takes a little time. Fortunately, during the Easter holidays, I took some time to go through it. This is the Stanford AI Index, and this is sort of actually It just gives you an overview of everything published about AI, all studies published about AI. So a lot of very great recent numbers in there, which not original reporting, but sort of a overview actually of the literature. And so last year, what we saw in this overview was very, very little actual information about jobs, because there really wasn't that much. And this year, for the first time in this report, you can see that there's been a handful of reports on research papers on the impact of AI on jobs and on productivity in companies. So these are the first real numbers we're seeing. But there's very little. So we also see that, obviously these models are still getting bigger, despite some signs that you can do quite a lot with smaller models. You also see that all these models come very, very close to each other. So they're basically, which also means, for instance, the almost free model Llama, which many companies are using also here, the Meta model, is basically almost as good as the OpenAI models currently. There's not that much of a difference. And if there is this week, maybe next week it'll be different. Because they're getting very, very close to each other. And that is important, because they're really in a race. So hallucinations not gone. This was an interesting one. So if you... So this is the factual, I think, yeah, right. So here you see that when asking questions about certain topics, and it sort of, being 80% right for a generative model is actually quite good. And so it just depends on the type of question. But typically, questions about people, biographical data, where was this person born, where did he study? Hallucination rates are around 50% still today. 50%. So this is technology that companies are actually implementing, right? And yeah, it's hard to understand. And then they're surprised when it sort of says something that's not true. So what are some other ideas from that report? So yes, AI is improving productivity in many companies. These productivity gains are not the kind that we were talking about 1 year, 2 years ago. They're much smaller. But they are real. Not everywhere. We're seeing productivity gains 5%, 10%. That's quite typical. There are jobs where it's much bigger than that. Right? Programming jobs, there the productivity gains are huge. I mean, you've got companies like Microsoft saying now that about a third of the computer code that they're writing is generated by AI. So in some jobs, yeah, obviously, I think many of you know that translation jobs, translating is no longer a job. I mean, it's basically going away very, very fast as a job. But in most situations, the productivity gains are quite limited, but they are real, right? So on the other hand, there was a very recent IBM report. I've got a slide coming up. That's just came out last week or 2 weeks ago, where they ask an awful lot of company CEOs, so how have your AI projects been doing? Most AI projects are not successful. That doesn't mean it doesn't work, but it's mostly, it turns out it doesn't work. Doesn't work as well as you expected, doesn't work at all, is not reliable enough. It's not possible to implement it over the whole company, or there are other unexpected problems with it. This is not unusual with a new technology. But it is unusual that we're seeing such a hurry to implement technology that just basically doesn't work reliably yet. And there is not really a path to it working reliably. Hallucinations are not a fixed problem. And for many jobs, for many situations in the workplace, you cannot get this technology to be reliable enough. And so it's strange to see this hurry. On the same time, this is an important trend to remark. So we've always said these models are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then in January, there was this story. Some of you may have noticed that. This Chinese model, which is very, very small, comparatively small, lightweight, cheap to train. They trained it for $6 million. These other models are moving towards the billions of dollars for training. And so, yes, this has been a key moment because it's made these companies sort of increase speed even more. They're going even faster because they're afraid the Chinese are catching up with them. So this model was one of these test time compute, as they call a model. So what they found is instead of making the model larger, where sort of the usefulness of making them bigger and bigger is sort of wearing out, making them 10 times bigger doesn't buy you as much as it did the first time. They've been doing this for 6 years now, and they're running out of space there with making them bigger. And sort of the new trend that turned up last year, end of last year, is what they call the test time compute method, where they just have the model think about the next word longer. Where the machine sort of takes the problem, divides it into pieces, and takes each piece in turn. But the main effect is let them think about it longer. This is called test time compute. So these models are also called reasoning AI models. They don't really reason, but that's what they're called. And so these models typically can be smaller, but they're slower, and they do often produce much better answers. But that is not an infinite way of scaling these things. But so the Chinese have this too, and they managed to do this very cheaply. Now, immediately, or a couple of days later in January, the American companies were saying, the Chinese were cheating. Because what they did is what is called distilling. They distilled ChatGPT. So basically, they asked millions of questions from ChatGPT, got the answers back, and fed the question and answer pairs to a much smaller model. And what you get then is a smaller model that behaves very similarly to the larger model. And which is why when you ask this DeepSeek which language model are you based on, it would tell you GPT-4. So the model itself was convinced that it was ChatGPT. So in a way, DeepSeek was caught red-handed stealing from the American companies. Obviously, there was some irony in that, since the GPT-4 model has been trained on pretty much the entire internet. And so basically, you could arguably say that OpenAI stole the entire internet. And then they didn't pay for it, they didn't ask for it. And then the Chinese stole GPT-4. So since that, we've seen, this is what happened in January, right? Since then, in the last couple of months, we've seen this speeding up. And this is really important to notice. Because it just seems like everything is developing faster, but actually what's happening is that stuff is being pushed out of the door faster. And safety checks are being even eliminated, and there's clear signs of that. This is just a number of the models that have been coming out the last couple of months. It's just speeding up enormously, which means, for instance, I often, for the newspaper, I sort of test all the chat bots and see which one is best. There's really no point testing that now, but it's going to be different next week. It's evolving so fast, even though the steps often are quite small. But what we're seeing also is, and these are signs that this speeding up is not exactly what it seems to be. We saw that these companies are changing plans suddenly, which they didn't used to do at this rate. So one day, Sam Altman says, we're preparing to, we've got here GPT-4, we're preparing to launch GPT-5, and sort of the suggestion was that was going to be about now, in May. Suddenly they changed their plans. They launch a GPT 4.1, which had never been spoken about before. They decide to launch a product called O3, of which they had previously said, we're not going to release that. So they suddenly changed their plan. It's clearly so that the internal teams that do safety checks are getting less time to do their work. We know that, for instance, the first version of ChatGPT, at the moment it was launched, the underlying GPT-3 model was actually almost 2 years old. And there'd been an awful lot of using that technology. And that's no longer the case with the models that are coming out now, which is why we're seeing problems with these models, right? Quite recently. Suddenly, OpenAI was forced to sort of take the current version of GPT-4 offline, replace it with an older version, because suddenly it started to, I don't know whether you read that, just 2 weeks ago, it suddenly started to tell everyone they were right about everything. So if you ask ChatGPT, I'd like to stop taking my cancer medication, is that a good idea? And you're so courageous. Yes, great plan. Everything you said, I'd like to sort of sell my house and start a company. Yes, go ahead. Wonderful. And the idea is probably that they wanted to make their chatbot nicer, right? But people like a positive answer. They like to be flattered. But this machine was so ChatGPT suddenly started to flatter people overly, and giving very and people were trying this out all the time, and sort of they were publishing, look, it told me to stop taking my medication. Very dangerous stuff, had to take it offline. It's strange that that's happened. Another thing, suddenly it turns out the latest version of the O3 model, which is their reasoning model, that has the highest score on many of these benchmarks, the best AI model you can have, was hallucinating much more than previous versions or than the other models. So how is that possible? Well, obviously they're working too fast now. Why are they working too fast? Because they're racing with the Chinese, they're racing with each other. And yes, there's some really, really worrying stories very recently. This is something they actually said. So there is something called OpenAI's preparedness framework, which is about sort of assessing the safety of their models. And so they have their security sort of procedures, which they do, and they've literally said, if our competitors have less secure procedures and race to bring out a dangerous model, well, obviously then we've got the right to do that too. So we can, if they cut corners, we reserve the right to cut corners too. They actually said that. Agents. This is the key breakthrough this year, right? I mean, you've all heard about AI agents, and it really is quite different from something like ChatGPT, but underlying that, this language model is still there. So that's important to know. All the same fundamental problems still there. You don't know what it's been trained on. You can't really control its behavior exactly. It can hallucinate, and it works a lot of the time, not all the time, fundamentally because it is a probabilistic system. So that's the main key movement in AI this year, moving to these agents. And you can feel the excitement with companies, right? These things are going to it's not just a chatbot answers a question, an agent fulfills a task, which sounds an awful lot like you can replace people with AI, and companies do really. And this, if you look in this Stanford AI report, there's some numbers from, for instance, many of the good research on AI is from McKinsey, but they're obviously somewhat prejudiced. But so it is the case that these companies that are investing in AI, they are really thinking, in their minds, they're thinking about saving money, they're thinking about hiring less people. It's always in their mind. It's not what they say. I was at Amazon last week. Frank Briels just spoke about the Amazon robots. Well, they just introduced a new one, the Vulcan robot last week, which does picking and storing stuff. And it uses many of the generative AI technology. It's starting to move into robots now. It's only the very beginning, but sort of we're seeing the beginning of that. Actually, Amazon hired the greatest AI and robotics specialist in Belgium, Pieter Abeel, is now working for Amazon, and he is actually working on taking ChatGPT, large models, and turning them into what he's been calling robotic foundation models, and so bringing this revolution in AI to robots. We're not seeing that yet on the floor. I mean, this Vulcan robot was the very beginning of it, where you could see it could sort of move a couple of things aside in a rack, and it could sort of pick up an envelope, and next time it'll pick up a book, and next time it'll pick up a bottle, which is really, really hard. It's always been really hard for robots. And the generative AI is helping to do that, but we're not fully into this robotic foundation model period yet. So that's something that we're going to be seeing. It's a lot to come, especially in the logistics sector. A lot to come very soon. Amazon is working on that. But so, yeah, what they typically tell you is it's going to make people's work a lot less dangerous, lighter work, Every Amazon person will tell you sort of these exact phrases. So they were really well media trained on that. So you could ask a question from 10 Amazon people. No, it's not taking anyone's job. It's making everyone's job more productive, more fun. And so this is a little bit more about these agents, because not robots yet, but the agents are what can basically do the work you do from home, right, where you don't actually have to be physically anywhere, is what an agent does. It can open a web browser, it can fill in a name. I mean, I was experimenting with this Chinese version, the Manus, which is a Chinese agent, which is free, and you can. Well, it's not totally free, but you can try out. Very interesting to see what it can and can't do. So the amazing is how far it gets. I mean, I asked it to sort of make a spreadsheet with the names of the 50 largest companies in the transport sector by coincidence. I did this about a month ago for the newspaper. Find me the 50 biggest transport companies in Flanders, find contact information there, and look for the ondernemingsnummer in the Kruispuntbank voor ondernemingen. And it did that. So you see it sort of looking up names and then typing them into the search box at the Kruispuntbank, finding the result, putting that into an Excel spreadsheet. You can see this happen. So the end result was, after sort of half an hour, a spreadsheet with sort of 4 names of companies that it actually managed to research with the contact information. I think in 2 cases it found a GSM number, but the system was convinced. It told me, yeah, I've done the work. Here's your spreadsheet. But there was only 4 names, not 50 in there. And it had gone wrong. And then it had the names of about 20 companies, but just the name. So it had totally failed. But that's the only way they can keep these agents going, is by saying just don't mind too much about the result. Keep going till the end. So the result was miserable. But it was just to see it do it. To see an agent do its stuff, that's really amazing. And so, yeah, you should take a look at what agents are doing, because they are getting much better. How fast are they going to get better? We don't know. Technology tends to move in strange, unpredictable ways. So these agents are, in some data, outperforming humans, and especially in programming tasks. That's where we're seeing most of that. Outperforming humans in some tasks in the short term. The longer I had this agent working for about 3/4 of an hour, something like that, it won't make it through the first 10 minutes before starting to fail. Something like that. That's where we are now. But yeah, companies feel they're so close, right? So these agents are, I'm told I have to speed up, and that is indeed true. So this is not news, but this was a press leak in the very sort of reliable online news service, The Information. It's called The Information. People from the Wall Street Journal used that moved there. Says this is one of the plans OpenAI, the company that makes ChatGPT, is talking about with their investors. When they want money, they say something somewhat different than they do when they talk to us. So yes, apparently there's a plan to charge companies for these agents. And apparently there's the plan to have a programming agent, an IT professional agent, that would be priced $20,000 a month, which is a lot of money for a human programmer, for a high-level IT person. So this is not what they've announced, but it was, I think, a reasonably reliable leak of the sort of stuff they're telling investors that they're going to be doing. So they're telling us, here's ChatGPT, you could make a poem about your great uncle for his birthday. At the same time, they're telling companies, we've got this. We've got a high-skilled programmer. He'll never get sick, and he'll cost $20,000 a month. At that point, hard to argue he's not going to take anyone's job. But they have not announced this. It's an important thing. This was a press leak. So this is also entirely new this month. A new standard called A2A, agent to agent, and this is a communication standard between these agents. All of this is entirely new. But Microsoft just said, oh yeah, so Google developed the standard. Microsoft had said, we're going to use that too. So agents from Microsoft and Google be talking to each other in this language A2A. So this is starting to happen. They're working out how agents are going to work together towards tasks. At the same time, these companies are racing to something called AGI. And this is important to know. AGI is artificial general intelligence, and it's basically a system that can do anything. OpenAI's definition of AGI is quite specific. It means a system that is capable of doing economically important, most economically interesting tasks as good, as well, or better than a human. Economically important tasks. So it is about performing jobs that have traditionally been done by people. That is what an AGI is in the definition of Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI. Now also, OpenAI has never made a secret that they are developing AGI. And that is important to know for all companies who are using this technology. So far and away, OpenAI is now the company with most enterprise customers using their technology towards agents, towards all these kinds of productivity games. OpenAI is currently still winning, they're ahead. And basically, their mission is not, very important to remember, their mission is not making a better version of ChatGPT with less hallucinations. Their mission is create AGI. And their definition of AGI is a system capable of doing all economically interesting work as good, as well, or better than a human. That is their task. That's what they're doing. And they want to do it in a way that benefits all humans, all of humanity. That's the rest of the phrase. So yeah, we're in this race. That is the real place. That's what the companies are developing. So basically, our companies here are using technology from a company that actually is working on something quite different. So this also means, these agents also mean that AI is making decisions. That's really inherent. It's really inherent in an agent, right? ChatGPT just suggests something. But whereas the agent is actually doing something, that's the whole point. It does something. That's where AI gets dangerous, Yuval Noah Harari argued in his latest book, which is very interesting. I don't agree with everything he writes, but it's a very, very interesting point of view. It's where AI starts to take decisions that we get into trouble. So what do we know about AI and jobs? As I told you before, we have productivity gains which are generally quite a lot lower than what these companies were thinking about. What we also see is that AI is equalizing performance in many jobs. It's not the same everywhere. In many cases, you get young, inexperienced people are able to program at the same level and at the same rate as a much more experienced person. It's an equalizer on the work floor, which is great if you're starting out, not so great if you have an awful lot of experience, and your experience is basically what you're coming to your employer with. So in some jobs, it works the reverse, right? There's also jobs where with AI, if you're really, really capable, you know exactly which question to ask from the AI, you have more gain, whereas a less skilled worker won't know what questions to ask from ChatGPT, right? So it's not always the case, but quite often it appears you can use a less experienced person to do the same job. That is one of the things that's happening on the workplace now. Based on these quite recent, research. Now, this a very, very strange actual product that's just been launched is by one smaller company is a system that changes the accent of a speaker. And so you can speak with an Indian accent, and it will sound like an American accent. So officially, the story is this is going to make you more confident if you're uncertain about your language. But obviously, it's to make an Indian call center sound like an American call center, obviously. And so we're going to see that here too. So this is just something that appeared just a couple of weeks ago. This stuff is turning out quite a lot. This is also a number very, very new from IBM, who some of their research, IBM, Microsoft have been doing some research which is often more revealing than these McKinsey reports. And so it's saying only 25% of AI initiatives have delivered the expected return on investment. Only 16% have scaled enterprise-wide. And so, yes, only just over half of CEOs say that they're getting more from AI than just cost reduction. It's an interesting little report. What we know is AI is changing jobs now. Obviously, some jobs have been impacted much more than others: copywriters, programmers, translators. How is it changing jobs? Well, one of the things is, for instance, scientists using some of these tools are spending less of their time generating ideas, more of the time checking what ChatGPT has done. That's going to be the case in many jobs. It's going to be more about checking what ChatGPT, Copilot, Claude, whatever the AI system is, what it has done, than doing your own work. That is easier for less experienced people. It's also, it requires, less effort, less experience, but it may also be less fun. And there's actual research starting to show that now, that people sort of enjoy their jobs less and are actually becoming less good at their job, since they're not actively searching for the solution themselves, but letting AI suggest it and just checking the result. So there is, in certain jobs, a danger of expertise being lost by the people still doing the job. So the cliched message is AI takes your boring routine tasks and automates them, and so what's going to be left for you is the interesting bits. And yeah, that is very relative. So I do believe that in every job, the unions need to discuss with the companies, what exactly are we trying to do here? What are we automating? And what is the result going to be on the job content? Because jobs will change, even if they don't disappear. I mean, from the research, it's clear most companies are actually counting on being able to work with less people. That's what that's what these companies think. They may be wrong, but they do believe that they're going to be able to work with less people. But what they're telling you is your job is going to be more fun, and it isn't necessarily the case, because your job is going to be very different, but it might not necessarily be in a way that you find more fun. So this is an actual number. Many employers, when asked by McKinsey, do say they expect to employ less people in the future because of AI, with the AI being the main factor. And so we're seeing that in some jobs. Obviously, not in all. This is a slide I once made. I'd like to share with you. So this is a productivity gain in the workplace for internal communications, right? So I write here. Cisco writes a couple of bullet points, which AI expands to a huge 3-page business memo. It's happening a lot. People are writing books now with generative AI. We're getting too much text. Most of it generated by AI. So Henry receives the memo in his inbox, has it summarized by AI into a couple of bullet points, which is a huge productivity gain, because we've produced many more documents in the enterprise, and these people have read through many more documents. End result, we've got these bullet points going from A to B, which may or may not be the same bullet points that Cisco wrote in number 1. But this is a productivity gain. You can prove that. So I just wanted to leave you with a couple of thoughts. Copyright issues around AI have not been sorted out at all. I don't have time to address them now, but there's just no solution. And especially since, as I said, we're working with American models. We don't know how they've been trained, except in some cases when we do know how they've been trained, and we now know that Llama has been trained on most books by most Flemish book authors. And they were very surprised. I called Katrien Hemmerichs myself last month and said, did you know that your books have been used to train the Llama AI? And she was very surprised and not very happy. Obviously, she was not asked, she was not paid. So we're trying to fix that on the European basis, but there's a while Europe is trying to fix that, there is also this countercurrent, which you've all felt, of Europe sort of saying, no, maybe we don't need too many rules for AI. And so there's this fight going on the European level. And so we do need to keep Europe on the right road to protecting copyrights. That's just one. Then there's this other subject, energy use of AI. I'm not going to be going into that. It's not as bad as they tell you. The energy use by the AI, it's gone down a lot. So a lot of the numbers going around, it's quite low. Yeah, so I'm having to finalize here. So what is actually the main message is this. There is a pie. It's not imaginary. There is productivity gain from AI. It's there. What we need to do is make sure the gains of it are evenly distributed, and that is not guaranteed at all. And I do believe that that's basically why you're here today and tomorrow, right? And I think it is a task for unions, or they have an important role to play in making sure that the pie does get divided evenly. And that's what I came here to tell you.